Clayton. This is Mr. Rogers, current resident in Clayton, and hopefully the new HOA president, Dr. Lane Carter. All right. Would you like to start first, Mr. Rogers? Ask any questions to the mayor?
Well, let's go with the gentleman that knows a little more about the area than the.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, if, for the new board to take place, the bylaws have to be adhered to, whether that's sending out the ballots.
Okay.
I'm sure the bylaws are very similar to others in the town. So written ballots have to be sent out with self-addressed stamped envelopes to be provided back to
Okay.
whatever destination is determined. But without that, you will not have a legitimate board. That election needs to be done in the way the bylaws are written.
I have a question for you. How would you be able to assist in the voting protocol and the development?
It's very difficult because I have to keep separate as far as the town and the HOA.
Right.
What I have extended is, as far as the town is involved, if the HOA or the residents feel the need to have the ballots processed through town center, I will accommodate that. I'll put those ballots can be dropped off at town hall. We'll have a town employee count those ballots.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Here's another question. What are the ways to modify the speed limit within the development?
That would have to be argued through the streets committee. This posted speed signs, actually being lowered from the 25 that they are. I mean, it could be presented to the streets committee, but ultimately that would be a streets committee's decision to make.
Now, who is that? Which person chairs that committee? Is that something we could
I
get
bel-
in contact with?
I don't have that list in front of me, but I want to say that it is Sean Bound.
Okay.
It could be Jonathan Burnett. I'm not sure. It is a council member. Anything that anytime a resident wants to bring something up or have addressed by, whether it be council directly or a committee, which council members are on all relevant committees, they would just have to put that notice into town. And then it'd be the responsibility of the council to call a meeting that's relevant to that issue and address it.
So the person who chairs the committee would call that?
Would call the meeting, yes.
Okay. And then we could have just open comment from.
Well, certain areas in development could probably stay 25, but in where our children are playing, that would be an ideal place to have that speed limit lower.
And again, it can go in front of committee, but it is a committee decision. It's not an individual's decision to
And
make.
it would just be for Providence Crossing, right? We wouldn't be affecting.
No, I
anything
mean,
else.
ultimately, every street's argued on its own.
Okay, good. So even Coldwater, Still River, definitely.
So the process would be, a resident would put something into town. We want to speak to the streets committee about the speeds in Providence Crossing. Then what will happen is, you just have to keep your eye on the website and an agenda will pop up on when that committee is. Once you put your notice in, you, at the same time, you want to be added to the agenda. So you speak. Otherwise, it's just the committee talking.
Okay.
Obviously, we would give the relevant resident a minute or two to make their point. But being on the agenda opens you up for more time on the floor. And for potentially some rebuttal from committee.
Okay.
But
When's the
that would
next
be-
meeting? When are we meeting again?
for streets, I think in the last council meeting, there was put out there for the streets committee to be called. I can't remember the relevant topic.
Okay, I'll get it.
But it would be in the next month, normally, that they call the committee meetings.
When I went there for the last meeting, it wasn't in the same place it had been before.
Was it in town hall or was it at the firehouse?
Well, I don't
Because it's
know.
only gonna be in one of those two locations.
I went by the town hall and the firehouse. Nobody was at the firehouse in that meeting that I attended a few months back. So it must have been at the town hall and I just didn't know where to go.
Okay, yes, town hall has the main entrance that everybody goes to see the residents. If you go down to the very next entrance of that building, it's just a little porch, and that's the entrance to council chambers.
Oh, okay.
If it's not the main office entrance that gets you into council chambers.
Okay, usually it's there, it's not at the firehouse.
Almost all the meetings have been held in chamber. The only time we moved to the front of our house was with COVID restrictions.
Okay.
We moved. Or if we anticipate an abundance of people, because Chambers is small.
Now, before I ask the next question, Ann Mix from Brazil and Riza from the Philippines would like to say hello to you, Mayor Nick Smith. Hey, everybody! All right, this is a very important issue, Mayor. How could the development provide an option for trampolines?
So if it's if it is currently in your deed restrictions, the only way you could have that removed, and again, you have to read your bylaws, okay? I'm only going off of what bylaws, I'm familiar with. But it'll state in your bylaws what it takes to change a deed restriction.
Okay,
In the neighboring neighborhood, they had, originally just had split rail fencing and everything else was restricted by deed. It takes 3/4 of the vote of the homeowners to change the deed restriction. So it would have to be a paper ballot, not so much a ballot or a vote, one way or the other, whether they're for or against it. And
Okay.
that's what happened over at the neighboring neighborhood.
So they approved it with a 3/4 vote
Yes,
of
of the
the
residents,
residents.
correct.
So that is kind of a hot button issue, like basketball hoops were there for a while, and I think because the weather's cooled down, it's not a big deal, but I expect it to crop up again in the summertime,
Most
in
definitely.
the spring and the summertime. So we're trying to think of a constructive way to let people have what they need, but at the same time, safety. Now, for instance, I just saw on Facebook a little bit ago, somebody's trampoline had blown away in this last big storm, and there it was somebody.
Somebody else had indicated also that they weighed their trampoline down to compensate for that 50-mile-an-hour.
Yeah, you'd have to have that sort of,
Right. There are special anchors out there too in more.
It's designed to be anchored properly, like
hi, Shizuki.
anything else is out there. Just like a shed, it's gotta be anchored properly to the ground.
is that something the town can
Riz.
inspect?
No.
Okay, so it would have to be an internal inspection, like an architectural review, like we do for,
If you could implement such a thing,
because I believe it is it's an important activity for some children.
I mean, ultimately, what needs to happen is the owner of the trampoline needs to understand their liability in having one. If it's not secured properly and it blows and damages the next door neighbor's house or car,
Then they're
they are
liable.
Right, that makes sense. So before we move forward on that, we have to really discuss what people are prepared for. They may not understand that.
Well, we might have to look into saying, maybe you should have your trampoline fenced, the property fenced in, to allow having a trampoline, so
That wouldn't necessarily help. I've
Yeah.
seen them go out of fenced properties.
Yeah, I understand, but if you wanted to keep other children from coming
Oh, yeah.
into your property, into your development, on your property.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, Marjorie. All right, I have another question for you. I don't know if you're aware, but recently there was an arsonist who had torched down the playground. So my question is, what steps are needed to get cameras installed in the park?
I think I've had this discussion. The town has the capability of wiring up the system if the HOA wishes to have one. But that
we
HOA
go.
would have to own and maintain those systems.
Okay,
Your biggest concern is gonna be vandalism. I'm gonna be honest with you. You put cameras up, they're gonna get broken, and they're gonna get broken repeatedly. So I would do your due diligence on how you can have a camera that has a lot of protection.
So let me make sure I'm understanding. So we would buy it, the homeowner association would buy it, but the town would install it, and then we would maintain it.
Correct. As far as the physicality of
Hello,
the unit
everyone.
and all of the necessary hardwired cables, that would be on ownership and responsibility of HOA. Now, if you wanted, the town would be willing to network it into their surveillance once it's up. If you want us to tie in so that the police department can all see it along with everything else, that's fine.
So what's the cost structure? Because you're putting it in, is that part of the service that you do for us?
Well, I mean, if the HOA is gonna do it, please notify me sooner rather than later, because the town is in the process of running lights over there. And while we run that electricity,
We would put in the cameras. far along in the process are you doing that?
I think they just, lights just came in, I could be wrong whether or not they're for here. I know I just got lights delivered, but I don't know what they were for.
Okay.
We can check back on that, about whether or not we need to move that forward more quickly.
And I could check with, the IT department and see what, if any cables would need to be run on the power. Because obviously if we're gonna run power, we're gonna have power over there. So, just for a power source, for a camera, that's no issue.
I know
The
that there's
communication
boxes.
side, the communication side would be the issue.
Okay.
Now, isn't it true that, the fire department said there might have been a cigarette thrown into that?
There we
vault?
go.
I do not know.
Because
I
I
wish-
talked to somebody else that used to be a part of your town council, and he had indicated that, they think that somebody might have thrown a cigarette into that mulch
Ooh.
and caused that fire, which would have, 5:30 in the morning, it seemed kind of awkward, somebody going out and starting a fire. If somebody had thrown a cigarette butt into that thing and it just smoldered long enough, it could have
It's
started
definitely a
that fire.
possibility.
So it's not, we can't put the whole blame on our development, somebody in our development starting a fire. It could have been somebody recklessly throwing their cigarette butt into that mulch and it could have started a fire.
I actually haven't looked at it. Does it look like there's like a big hole?
Maybe over there.
Okay. I haven't
We can
looked.
take a look at that,
One
take
of-
pictures.
For one of the slides is basically nailed it down a little bit, but it doesn't look so super critical.
Well, the big thing was the tube through the middle, right?
Mhm.
That part has melted completely.
And honestly, we could ask some people what we're talking about roping off that area, but I don't know the feasibility about doing that.
That is, Nigel said he was going to put up, like, that you couldn't
Nothing's
use
put
it.
up,
No, I know nothing's put up.
and then to buy that tape and all, it's just,
Yeah. Well, the
I mean,
last
that's
time
something we could ask the police department if they'd have any extra tape or something, just to,
people are continuing to use it. So, I don't know what their,
There's safety issues there if they're gonna continue to use
yeah,
that.
it's our
know?
liability as an HOA.
Ultimately, that's the HOA's call.
Right.
If, I have to agree, it's a liability, it's an open liability. So if it's your decision to close it, you need to close it.
Well,
Now, whether or not,
I would like to see that we have some sort of chain of command at this point. I don't think.
well, where, let me ask, if I could back up a little. Where is the current board?
Where are they?
Yes, are they in effect? Is
As
there
far
an
as I
actual
know.
board in effect right
As far as I know, I'm on it, in theory.
now? Okay,
I'm a member at large. I began as a treasurer and then went to, I believe it was secretary, I don't really remember, but now I'm at large. But basically because I was trying to change things, make them different, and I kinda got sidelined a little bit. So now I'm still waiting to see what kind of movement, and people are asking, like, why aren't we fixing this playground? Why aren't we, at least working it off until it does get fixed? And so it is a little disturbing that we don't have leadership at this point.
well, all I can emphasize is to get the ballots out as soon as possible. Now, because as I understand it, there's been virtual votes.
In the past,
In the past, that is not in the bylaws.
Right.
And really can't be enforced. Again, the HOA does what they wanna do, but it could be contested, would be my issue, if you did it that way. My recommendation is just stick to the bylaws, and there isn't an upfront cost that the current HOA board is supposed to handle in buying all these ballots, having them printed, having the second address stamped envelope to go back. And it does say that, I mean, I don't, so it's, it's incumbent as far as finance, because you have to buy it's 2 stamps per house. One to send them the ballot, and then they have to have another envelope inside that can be mailed back, that's already stamped. That's how other bylaws are written, I'm sure yours are pretty similar.
right,
But that is the only way
okay.
to become a legitimate board, and to take, once that process is done, then you can actually effectively have a board. I mean,
Well, what's your
if there's
advice
not
then
one,
to try and move forward with mailing out ballots as just a step to get going? Because if they're not, if the former board, including myself, is not legitimate, which I believe to be true, we have no board. It's just an operating collective of people who sometimes get things done.
Well, whoever's in control of the board's entity and control of the board's bank account ultimately needs to finance the ballots,
Okay.
and that has to happen. Because per the bylaws, ballots have to be sent out
They
by
have
the
to be
board.
sent out, exactly. Okay. Well, I think we're pretty clear on that. Did you have any questions about that, Mr. Rogers?
No, I'm, give me a chance to get my bearings and all.
But I must be clear as far as the sitting here representing town. Until that happens, you can contest as a resident, but you can't contest as a board.
Okay.
You can't come to town council contesting something as a board if you're not a legitimate board.
Okay.
And or a board member. But you can always come to council and contest it as a resident at any time. But you will only speak for yourself at that point.
Right.
Not the common, in the best interest of the entire community. Only the board can do
Okay. But the argument would be then circular. You
It-
know, have a
it would.
legitimate board.
that. It would, and that would be, I would have to speak to my legal department for town.
Mhm.
Should the board come to me and ask for a request that isn't a common request, if the current board came to me, I would have to speak to legal as to whether or not I can entertain that.
Mhm. So we would have to have a majority of the board do that. Couldn't just be one member.
It can be one member, but it has to be a board that's recognized as a board by the residents.
Mhm.
You know, if the majority of the residents don't recognize the board that's here, it puts council and town in a position to recognize them because they don't represent the group in which they're coming speaking for.
Right.
So, I mean,
Well, let's
the
see.
ballots need to be expedited.
Okay.
That's all I can say.
Well,
The
let's
faster
see
you
if
get
we
that
can-
done, the faster town can accommodate without hesitation any requests. Or can consider any requests without hesitation, because then we know we're dealing with a legitimate board that the people voted in.
Okay, so top priority, it's looking like we need to make sure that we get the ballots mailed out. We need to get support from at least one other member of the board who has access to financials in order to get those ballots printed and
Okay.
stamped in the other envelopes. done.
That was Dr. Lane Carter, who will be running for HOA president.
Vote for me.
Vote for her. All right, I have one last question for you before we get some grub. Now, how would we reinstate daycare for the residents because the current HOA president closed it due to unspecified legalities?
Well, I mean, honestly, I'd have to look into that.
Okay.
Because is it a deed restricted issue?
I believe that it's bylaws about small businesses, but there are other ones that run in development.
Where you're gonna have bylaws and then you're gonna have deed restrictions.
Right.
And that was gonna fall under your deed restrictions, it's gonna say that something to the effect of, they can't operate a curbside business, a curb traffic business, meaning people coming and going from the house. Something, I'd have to read the wording,
Okay.
to tell you. I could, if the past president or the current president has set a policy, the board has the authority as long as the board voted on it. Unless it contradicts the deeds or the bylaws, because they are ultimately what you fall back on.
Yeah, we'll have to read that, but I know they were shut down, any of the daycares were shut down. The other small businesses seem to be operating, so maybe it's the curbside thing, like you said. And so then that would mean we'd have to vote on it again as a community.
Because I mean, ultimately, daycares is much different, it's looked at by the residents much differently than someone who's just shipping and packing from their house, or, doing signage or stuff like that from their home. Because ultimately, a daycare affects the residents around it.
Yeah.
You got 15 kids running around out back all day. It affects that direct neighbor. And that's why a lot of communities put that in their deed restriction.
I understand. I think we had some, they were very small daycares, like.
With that,
six
now
kids.
there was a period of executive order from the governor who pretty much stomped on all that and said daycares can be done. But I think that's since been rescinded.
Okay,
Oh, that's good to know.
yeah, it is good to know.
Any more questions for the mayor?
Anybody online want anything?
Somebody from Australia says, what's your favorite color?
Purple.
Purple. Well, Mayor, I'd like to thank you for taking taking time off your busy schedule to address the issues. You know, hopefully of the next president, my best friend from the Air Force.
That was
Pound it out, pound it out, pound it out. Pow. Thank you so much. All right, now let's go see what we're gonna eat. That's what people want to see. Thank you, guys. Okay, Marjorie. Let's see, we have noodles, sausages, and let's see what else we got here. Ah, some grapes. We have a dog. Benji, give me your paw. Paw. Sit. 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 Benji, sit. Come on, you're embarrassing me. Good boy. Now, give me your paw. Benji, paw. Benji, paw. Good boy. Now say, kamusta po. Kamusta po. Kamusta po. Good job. I'll get you a snack. All right, so thank you for stopping by. Let's look at the noodles again. And the 55th person who left a comment will get a t-shirt and will be eligible for the end of the month's drawing for $100. So we're doing February and March on at Judah Smith's LS, where we'll be giving away 25,000 pesos. So good luck to everyone, and thank you for standing by.